Hi, welcome to the eighth video of this series of videos on surviving IIM Ahmedabad. And this one's about competitions. So, business competitions and competitions by other B schools for their business fest form a very exciting part of the IIM Ahmedabad or a B school journey. Typically, most of them happen over the second year, or people have more time to engage with them in the second year. So, this video is applicable for a lot of second years as much as it's applicable for the first years because some competitions do end up happening in the first year as well. So, as always, just go over these slides if you haven't had a chance to have a better sense of where I'm coming from when I'm talking about these things. And I'll just get started with the content. Why engage in competitions at all? So, first thing is very clear. There is enhancement of CV which happens. So, there are competitions which actually have different impact value when it comes to an individual CV. And I think that's a key differentiation that needs to be made. Not all competitions are equal. Uh, you will get a better sense of what competitions look good depending upon your own priorities. So let's say I'm someone who's looking for a marketing role. Then perhaps engaging in competitions and trying to win the competitions which are organized by big marketing organizations are more desirable than, let's say, finance competitions organized by a B school. So enhancing CV is great, but I think there should be a direction to in which direction you're trying to enhance your CV depending upon your own goals. That's one aspect. So it's alignment essentially. Second question here is that you have to ask that not all competitions really carry that significant amount of weight on the CV. And especially if you try to compare the amount of effort it takes to do those competitions, you might feel that that effort is probably better invested in some of the other activities on campus, like academics. So, really take a call whether that competition carries that weight and whether it's just a wasted effort. I know this because I was one of those people who actually did so many competitions, and it was only post facto when I realized that if I was doing this from a CV perspective, did it really make sense? But that's not the only reason why people do competitions. The second is the learning aspect. There are definite tangible learnings which are there and which relates to the third point as well. That competitions give you a chance to hone your certain skills. So like through competitions, I got a chance to learn different things because while I was doing my research for different competitions, I got to know more, something which was outside of what I was learning in the classroom. So you do get tangible learning. Second is peer learning. I had a chance to make teams with different sets of people, and there was a great peer-to-peer learning which happened because I realized that in a classroom when we were constrained, people, which includes me, were not always the most creative because we were still somehow constrained by the environment of the classroom. But when it came to competitions, we were absolutely thinking out of the box and the learning was significant. So peer-to-peer learning. And the third is learning from professors, which is a point I'll again address later in this slide also. But a lot of times we forget that competition is also a chance for us to engage with the professors in another manner outside the classroom. Because the problems are tough ones of the industry, especially if you're doing a competition with a big company. So it gives you an opportunity to learn more from the professors outside of the curriculum. So clearly, there's a significant learning potential also from a competition. And the third is creationist mindset along with validation. What I mean by that is just trying to build something, build a solution for a big company. Like I remember when I was on campus, so with two of my batchmates, I had a chance to participate in this competition called PNG CEO Challenge, and we won the nationals, the campus, the nationals, and then the IIME round, which was Indian subcontinent, Middle East, and Africa, and went for the global finals. And throughout, in every round that we gave, the one thing that really drove us, our team, at least in that point of time, was that we were trying to solve a problem that PNG really has. We were given a real life problem, and we were so excited that we will create a new solution. And that pumped us more than anything else. And at the same time, when we actually ended up winning, we got a significant amount of validation that, hey, We are not just people who are having exams, and our knowledge is not just getting validated in a classroom through grades. There are senior leaders in the industry who are validating our ideas, and that's how we won that particular round. So that's a different thrill altogether to be able to create a solution. So I think again, engagement is a cocktail of the three reasons, and you really have to figure out what is your driving force. If your driving force is enhancement of a CV, then there are certain competitions that you should skip. If let's say your enhancement is learning, then there are certain ways in which you will have to form your team, certain people that you might learn more from. And if your mindset is just creationist along with validation, then you will have to see whose validation are you looking for. If it's the validation from PNG, it makes a lot of sense. Some of the competitions are run by campus where the initial rounds are evaluated by students. Is that a validation that you want, and whether that's worth the time? That's a call an individual has to take. So that's the larger question about engaging in competitions at all. So I feel that the prize money typically in competitions is clear, but there are costs involved. And it's a good idea to essentially think through these 5 points. And I've already touched upon these. First is the brand of the competition. Does it add value to the CV? Second is timelines of the competition. Now, this is from a personal learning that I gave, like I participated in a few competitions in my second year, cleared the first round, and I realized that the second round is clashing with my exams and I could not do the submission. So clearly, if I was doing this competition to see it end to end, the effort, the time I put in for the first round went for a toss. I could have really better prepared myself to see that the timelines of this competition are going to be problematic. At the same time, the second problem I faced in some of the other instances was that the timeline of 2 or 3 competitions were together. Like their second or third round were clashing. And I knew at that point in time I have to make a call and pick only one of them. So why not do that? Take that call a little early and save yourself from the trouble, because it's really irritating to do 1 or 2 rounds and then realize you cannot go for the third round. So can you really do all the rounds according to the timelines of the competition? That's an important question to answer. Third is about the problem statement. Does it really excite you or relates to your strength? This is again, and I think all of these questions are coming from the fallacies that I committed in my second year. I took part in competitions left, right, and center, even when the problem didn't excite me or related to my strength. What ended up happening was that I spent significant amount of time doing a competition which neither excited me nor was I good at it. And people who had worked in that domain, or people who were seeking careers in that domain, let's say PM Tech. I was not seeking career in PM Tech when I was on campus, and I took part in PM Tech competitions also. Whereas I was not aware of the recent technologies which are there, which can help solve that problem better. So it was not the smartest of calls to actually do that competition. So my suggestion would be just answer this for yourself. If this excites you or not, and does it really does it really align with your strengths or not? The fourth is the opportunity cost of it. If you are spending significant time on it, you are taking this time away from something else. In second year, yes, there will be moments in your life when you really don't have a lot of things to do. At that point of time, doing competitions is great. But if the competition is even coming at the expense of your sleep in a tight moment, I would say that's a that's a call you have to take, because sleep also does not come that easily on campus sometimes. So see the opportunity cost of it, whether it's in terms of academics, whether in terms of extracurricular activities, whether it's in terms of a trip, or whether it's just sleep. And why all of this matters is because, and especially I would say the timeline, the problem statement, and the opportunity cost. If you are doing an average job out of a submission, just think through what impression does it have on the evaluators and the teammates. It's a small world at the end of the day. Yes, the chances are the evaluators might not remember you, but specifically in the case when you're doing it for a different campus, it's possible that those people who are your peers in many ways, they might just remember and they might form an impression about you, even when you're doing a local submission on your own campus. So an average submission does not leave the evaluator with a very good impression of the person who has submitted. You cannot go about and explaining, oh, I did not have enough time, oh, I did this only in 2 hours, when the expectation was 12 hours, and from a 2 hours submission perspective, I've done a very good job. You cannot write all those arguments down. What matters is what you have submitted. So if you feel you're only going to submit an average submission, do not do that, because people have a bad impression then. And the second thing is on the teammates, right? If you do not have a lot of time at your hand, you will not be able to commit, and some of your teammates will end up feeling that their time has been misappropriated, or they might just feel that you've not done a very good job of it. So your teammates also will not appreciate an average submission, because you might demand more from them, or in general they might just feel that you're not as smart as you think you are, or as your campus persona would be, which is a risky thing to do in the first place. So why have someone in your batch feeling that this person does not have the best of work ethics, because they will not be able to see all the constraints you are working with. So overall, I would say that don't bite more than you can chew when it comes to competitions. Now let's say, assuming you have decided to do a competition. Now these are a couple of useful things to do. One is about how do you make the team, and the second is on the execution front. So one key thing I would say that there is no best person for the team. And again, all of these points are flowing in from things that I have learned. Uh, do not try to seek out, oh, that person is very good in this particular thing, we should definitely have that person. That person may or may not add value. But if that person is too individualistic, then the team breaks down. From my learning, I would always go for a synergetic team rather than individual brilliance. Because it's a team submission, the team has to work, everyone adds something to the table. If there's one person who's able to bulldoze everyone else, it's not the person you want on your team. So from this synergy perspective, the team members ideally should be similarly motivated. What I mean by that is one of the earlier questions, right? That the problem statement should excite them. Or let's say they're seeking the same thing out of it, that they're all seeking a similar kind of learning or similar kind of validation. So I would say the motivations are similar, because that will define the amount of time that they are willing to give. The next question comes, they might be willing to give the time, but do they have the time? Because in second year, at least in Ahmedabad, the timelines are different in terms of your courses. So you have to be sure whether all the team members have the time available for the competition's timeline. These two can actually lead to significant stress levels and conflict. People might end up feeling, oh, I wish I had made a team with someone else. So you can avoid that by having a more clear discussion upfront with the team members that you are seeking. The third, perhaps the most important part, is that each one should be able to respect each other's intellect and should be able to disagree creatively and constructively. It's only when this process happens, that's why it's a team, most of the competitions are team submissions, not individual submissions. Because one idea has to be, one idea will not always be the best one. It's when people creatively disagree and they construct something new out of it, then you really come up with a very good idea. And I can say this from the experience of all the competitions I've been a part of. The teams where we have essentially fought out the most have been the ones where the results have been the most positive. Things perhaps where everything went too smoothly, wherein let's say one person said and all of us were too coy to disagree with them. Those competitions never resulted in a good outcome for me. So trust each other's intellect, and by that I also mean that there should not be one person like the individual brilliance point who feels that they can carry the whole team. Then let them make the team somewhere else. As an individual, you would be better off making team with people who seek synergy and have disagreements in your team. The fourth aspect is having complementary skills. So most competitions, I'm not saying all, most competitions will require some amount of number crunching, making presentations, presenting them, and having a significant amount of research repository. So you could ideally have a team which has a mixture of these skills. Like from my experience in most of the competitions that I took a part of, I was the one who handled the oratory aspect of it. To a certain extent, I handled the research part of it. But typically, the presentation making and the number crunching were done by some of the other people in the team. So this is how I typically found my teams. So figure out what your strengths and I would say what the strengths of the other team members are, and then make the team. Having all of these skills together will be helpful. And the last of all would be that have people who are fun to work with. If I go back to my PNG story, which I was talking about earlier, I remember when we were going through different rounds, our WhatsApp group was actually called Laughing Maniacs because while preparing our solutions, we used to laugh so much while some of the other teams were so stressed out. I think our laughter and the consequent lesser level of stress actually allowed us to be more creative and come up with better solutions, which helped us in the, I would not say better, let's say solutions which are more aligned with the judges. So have people who are fun to work with because competitions can be significantly taxing in terms of the time commitment that they draw out. So that would be my idea of how to make a good team. And again, this is just my subjective experience. The next aspect would be now that you have a kick-ass team in place, how do you exceed expectations in your execution? So pretty wordy. So one is external help. Get advice from the previous winners. How so most competitions are legacy competitions that they would have happened over the previous years as well. Try to seek what their advice is, and like other advisors talk about, verify that and try to, if you cannot verify, at least try to see whether it's logical or not, because it might happen that the previous year's winners won the competition just by a lucky chance. So but do get their inputs. Second is, if you're talking about a competition from a particular firm, if you can do some kind of research and talk to someone within the firm, that could be helpful, because you essentially get a sense of what the firm's priorities are, and talk a little bit more about that later on also here. But if you can get a sense of talking with someone in the firm, that's great, but I would keep that not as a very high priority point. And the last is seek out professors. That's or I'll just go back to the firm point. Sometimes it's pretty helpful to talk to experts about the industry. So to get a better sense, to validate some of your ideas, you might ask people, hey, do you think this will work or not? That's where the people from the firm or the industry can be pretty helpful. The last is seeking out professors. I've already mentioned this point. I think a lot of us, while doing a competitions, do not seek out our professors. I didn't for most of my competitions. I think it was a major mistake. I mean, the professors, it just gives you one more avenue first to engage with the professors and learn from them, because they can tell you so much more. And also, they can really do a lot of value addition and be that expert, also, like I was mentioning just a minute ago, to tell you what works and what doesn't work. So, three sources of external advice. Again, not exhaustive. Then it's just about the execution aspect of it. The most important aspect is think out of the box and be bold. Just imagine this: if a company is giving you a problem statement, more often than not, it's because it's a real problem that they're working on. And in a firm setting, they might have already tried all the conventional ways of doing the problem, of solving that particular problem. They are essentially reaching out to a BSchool campus with an explicit objective, or rather, I would say an implicit objective. They don't say that out loud. An implicit objective that, hey, we have tried everything conventional. Let's now get something absolutely crazy, absolutely out of the box. Because sometimes people in the organization might not be incentivized enough to give those absolutely wacky ideas, which might be wacky enough to get you labeled as crazy. But as a student, you can absolutely do that. And in the competitions, I think where we went out of the box, that was appreciated. In fact, in the PNG, in the IIM round, when we were presenting in South Africa, there the judges, after a result came out, actually told us that we won to a great extent because our ideas, we were trying to think out of the box. And they actually say that we should have attempted to be even more bold and think even more out of the box. So just remember that the company most likely wants you to think out of the box, because all the other conventional solutions are something they could have already tried and have not worked. That's why they've given this competition on campus among all the problem statements they could have. So perhaps the most important thing here, then Do primary research and reference your extensive secondary research. Especially seek out the company's values and major press statements by the firm to understand their priorities. While you're thinking out of the box, if you can relate that to something the firm is already trying to do or has shown intent to do, that would be great, because then you can essentially show that the feasibility of the solution is also there. So what you are saying might sound a little crazy because that's the thinking outside of the box bit, but you can, if you can align it with the company's values and their priorities, then you can say, hey, the execution, the chances of of failure of execution are diminished because the company also wants to do something like this. So that's where the primary research helps, and in general, researching around the problem. Research, I would say, is a critical step, especially if you look at other competition also in this space of what is happening. So do your secondary to understand what other players in the space have done. And the primary is if you can talk to customers or directly talk to the competitor, someone that you know, that can be pretty helpful. Like in some of the competitions that we took part, we talked to people who use that particular product, and we got insights in like a 10-minute conversation that we could not have figured out on our own. So do primary to the extent possible, even if it's not like the most scientific way of doing primary, but just talk to more people. I think that's the point I want to drive uh, at. So talk. Then aesthetics and design should really excel. Uh, it helps, especially if you're giving complicated ideas, it helps if they're presented in a simplified fashion. So I would urge you to try and be as clear and as aesthetically pleasing as you can be in your presentation. If the competition does not ask for numbers, you should still ideally attempt to do some kind of number crunching, because that both shows, sometimes it shows the potential of the solution. In, let's say, just showing that this solution can lead to 15% growth and the market size is xxx billion. Your numbers help validate the claims you are making. So do not shy from number crunching. And second is, number crunching also gives you a sense of feasibility of the solution. So if it's asked, do it extensively. If it's not asked, still try to give some numbers to the extent possible. And this one is about presentation. Whenever you're presenting for a competition, anticipate questions, prepare for them, and you will do really well. So just follow these pieces of advice, and I think your competitions will be sorted. So just like always, don't forget to revisit these ideas, share them with others. Let me know if they have been helpful. Look at some of the other videos on this channel. They might help you better understand how to structure problems, especially from a competition perspective, as also the case interview perspective. And take care, best of luck, and stay curious.